Thank you for joining us tonight, and a special thank you to our esteemed faculty panel for joining us. We have Dr. Will Perez, Dr. Kyo Yamashiro, and Dr. Manuel Ponce. They all teach in our program and also chair students with the registration process, so we are very thrilled and honored to have them here. And I'm just going to pop some questions into the chat that I'm going to be asking them, just so we all have the visual reference point as well. So I'm going to ask each faculty member to just introduce themselves and then go through each of these questions. So go through their research area of interest, the classes or class that they teach in the program or have taught, their experience with leading a DRC, as we call them, which is the small group of students that work on their thesis together. It's not a group thesis, but they are all working on their own topics in the same group together. And then also, I will ask them to share what is one reason that they would recommend the program to a student. So let's start with Dr. Kyo Yamashiro.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you tonight. My areas of interest are focused on a range of policy issues that at the state, federal, and local levels, but I have a background in looking at charter school and choice programs, but right now I'm looking at ethnic studies in high school, and I have a study that's sort of looking both at the effects of taking an ethnic studies course in high school on academic outcomes, but also we um, interviewed students and teachers and observed classrooms to see what it looks like on the ground. So that we're coming out with some um, papers and results on that as it's wrapping up this year. In the program, I teach a class called Using Research for Improvement and Equity, and it's where my background is also in trying to bridge the gap between research and practice and research and policy. And so I'm really interested in forming what are called research practice partnerships, and worked on a big one with LA Unified, and I'm now working on some smaller ones. But so this class kind of delves into what are some different models for collaboratively working together to use research for improvement, to make sense of the research together, to even conduct the research together so that it's useful, relevant, and timely for practice needs. Um, I am starting to lead a DRC just this coming fall, so I don't have um, current lessons learned and experiences, but I can say that from my past experience at another institution and supporting doctoral research that and chairing and serving on committees here too, that that these structured classes that support you in actually putting together your ideas and putting them on paper and figuring out how to ask a research question and then how to do the research and how to synthesize it. All of these steps to be able to do them in a structured environment is really um, helpful. And so that is kind of part of my answer for number four, is that there's been a really intentional work in building the program out so that these steps, you are well supported along the way, not just with these DRCs, but through the DRC work with faculty, you're also building relationships with students. So those students throughout your cohort, but especially in your DRC, become kind of your support group. And I think that's a really important piece of it. And those relationships will likely continue, you know, on long after you finish your dissertation and you complete the program. So yeah, looking forward to questions too. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yamashiro. And we will have some time for some Q&A once we finish the panel questions. Thank you so much. So let's move on now to Dr. Perez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Will Perez. I am a professor, but also serve as chair of our Department of Ed Leadership, and I'm just thrilled to be part of such an amazing group of faculty that really do embody a lot of the ideals that you'll read about in our website and on our materials about our programs, and that is social justice and equity. I mean, you'll see it in the courses. You'll hear faculty talk about the work that they're doing. And that's the reason I came to LMU. I was at a previous institution for 13 years and had a similar social justice commitment, but LMU also was one of these rare institutions that was unapologetic about that. And all of our faculty in the various ways in which they do equity and social justice work very much don't just talk the talk, but they walk the walk. Now, in terms of the first question that Michaela posed to us, my interests broadly focus on education and immigration. And within sort of those larger areas, I particularly focus on sort of both the immigrant experience as it relates to immigration status, so in particularly undocumented students. I've done a lot of work and published a couple of books about the experiences of accessing higher education for undocumented students. And then when DACA came on board, kind of what DACA meant in terms of access and equity. The other vein of my work over the past 20 years is that I've been in the professoriate has been on language and language equity, and particularly for multilingual learners. So I've done a lot of work around multilingual learners, but most recently, I've honed in a particular population of multilingual learners, and that is youth that are immigrant background primarily from Mexico, but there are also youth from Central America who are trilingual, who in addition to English and Spanish, they also navigate kind of their indigenous language that oftentimes is the parents' first language or primary language or dominant language, and they may speak Spanish a little bit, but in the home language is an indigenous language. So we've written a book that just came out last year about kind of what that experience looks like for students in our K-12 system, and also kind of the implications for their transition to higher ed and how to promote multilingualism. I think that's one of the themes that you'll find across many of our programs is that emphasis on multilingualism and supporting sort of the kind of the rich linguistic diversity, not only of the LA region, but California and increasingly many parts of the country that have multilingual communities. So that's the work that I do. A lot of my advocacy outside of the classroom focuses on those issues, and I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations around that. And in the program, I've taught two courses primarily. The first course that is the very first required course of the program, which is called Leadership for Social Justice. That's where you begin to learn the theories and the frameworks and kind of the epistemologies of how to understand social justice in the context of educational access and equity. I taught that course, for many years. That's a course that now our co-director of the program, Dolores Delgado Bernal, teaches, and she usually co-teaches it with another faculty member. When she first joined the faculty, she and I co-taught it. This past year, she co-taught it with Professor Joaquin Noguera, who is one of the recent additions to our faculty. And I'm not sure who's co-teaching it with Dolores next semester, but that's a course where you learn about kind of how to translate theory to practice, and it's the initial introduction. You'll get others opportunities later. And then the other course I taught is actually the course that Dr. Yamashiro really kind of just took it to a whole new level. It used to be called something else when I taught it back in the day. She joined the faculty. She, brought in kind of her expertise in researcher practitioner partnerships, and kind of how to do that collaboration and And so, so I taught that course in this coming year because Dr. Yamashiro is, taking on some responsibilities beyond her faculty role. I'll be filling in for her and teaching that course again. After she's taken it and greatly improved it since the last time I taught it. So and policy is one of the kind of veins. So I look at language policy and access policy as it relates to undocumented students. So I geek out on policy. Kyo and I actually geek out on policy a lot. With Manuel too, we geek out on policy. And then the DRCs, I run 2 DRCs since coming to LMU. Prior to that, I've chaired many dissertations. I think currently I'm at about 55 dissertations that I've chaired in my career. The last 10 have been through 2 different DRCs that I've chaired. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's an opportunity. I feel like I learned just as much from the students as they learn in their process of discovery and identifying their research question, their kind of research theoretical framework, and doing the data collection analysis and the write-up and presentation of the work. And as has been mentioned by my colleagues, the DRCs become really tight. I mean, they really do become like a family. I mean, on both occasions, we'll meet, we have regular meetings as a group. And somebody hasn't shown up yet, and they'll just text each other. They have a WhatsApp group or they have a text chain, and then or they'll know in advance. They're like, oh, something came up at so and so's work. I mean, that's how intimate those relationships become. And I can tell you from those of my students that have graduated already, those relationships do continue and they become important part of their professional networks. And because folks come in at different levels in their professional trajectory, they also become mentoring relationships, where you have folks that are more advanced in their careers and folks that are mid-career or thereabouts, that that creates an opportunity for them to be soundboards for each other and be sources of professional support. So what I would say, one of the things that I would recommend about this program is our students are folks that are really passionate about the topic that they study. So this is a place where you bring that passion, you bring those ideas, we give you the tools to to do something with that idea and to bring it back to the work that you will continue to carry on after you graduate from the program. So this is a place where we fuel kind of those passions, and we provide the scaffolding and the skills so that you can do something that you're excited about. I mean, there's nothing having chair dissertations. There's nothing more challenging than doing a dissertation on a topic that you're really not super excited about. I mean, it feels 10 times more difficult. But if you're excited about it, it doesn't even feel like work, right? And those are some of the things that we look for when you formally apply and you go through the interview process. Our faculty here have been part of those interview panels where we ask students about their passions and what kind of difference do they want to make in the world in terms of their spheres of influence as educators in the various sectors, whether it's higher ed, whether it's K-12, whether it's charter, whether it's Catholic. Those are the kinds of things that we look to nurture and support through our courses and our advising and guidance. So that's me, and look forward to other questions after during the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perez. All right, Dr. Ponce.
Thank you. Great to be with everyone. Thank you for coming out and checking out our program. Manuel Ponce, I'm a clinical professor in the Educational Leadership Department. I have the pleasure of also being a graduate of the LMU doctoral program. I was in cohort 6 and graduated from the program, so I see it from a little bit of a different perspective as well. So my research areas of interest, I'm a practitioner in terms of school leadership. So I've been a principal and a superintendent, So a lot of my area is around school leadership, around executive leadership, around school reform and improvement for all students. I'm also very much into working on diverse pipelines of leadership and teaching, trying to ensure that we're diversifying the workspace for leaders of color and teachers of color and really just diverse leaders and teachers, regardless of color, just that diversity in thought and making sure that students feel that there's representation, that they see themselves in their leaders, in their teachers, to support them in that work. The class that I teach a class usually during the summertime. It's management of fiscal and human capital. So essentially, it's our finance, budgeting, human resources course. And I also teach that as part of our admin leadership program as well. And I always tell people it's not the flashy course. People want to talk about the theory and pieces, but it actually keeps the doors open and the lights on wherever you're working. So it's integral to ensuring that you have successful work. And so I teach that class. In leading the DRC, one of the things that I've seen is it's like a PLC, but super PLC. People they're very passionate, as my colleagues suggested, they're very passionate about the idea that you have, the problem you're trying to solve, and these groups that come together are all passionate about it, but they're always supporting each other. They're always working towards how can we be a part of your story and your journey. The other thing that I like about the DRC is it's also flexible enough that we can differentiate and support you in what you need when you need it. And so there might be folks that are ahead in terms of their own research, and there might be some that are taking a little bit more time to really contemplate. We are able to be flexible in that way so that we meet you where you are and not try to keep you moving towards an arbitrary idea of where you should be. And we want you to be, we want to get you done and completed, but we also want to make sure that you get as much as you can out of the journey. And so those DRCs I think are really powerful, that we can really support you in what you need specifically. And one reason I would recommend this program, really it's a real dedication to your success, the program itself. So every professor, every director, assistant director, they're in it to make sure you specifically are successful. There's a lot of other programs that have many more students in a cohort, and you become just part of a cohort as opposed to being individual as well. And so really the commitment is to get to make sure you're successful and complete. And so that when you get that doctorate, you're able to go open more doors for yourself, but also for others. So I think there's just a commitment that we want you to be successful, and we'll do whatever it takes. I felt that when I was in the program, and I feel it in the way that we work with our students as well and our faculty. So, and yeah, I'm looking forward to questions as well. Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ponce. Right, well, thank you again to our faculty panel. I'm going to put in the chat just links to each of their bios on the School of Education's faculty pages, so you can read more about them and their research interests and just their publications and other kinds of leadership roles that they may have in the School of Education. So now we are going to move on to the fun part of the evening, which is the Q&A portion. So I invite you to either raise your hand if you want to ask your question verbally. You can put it in the chat, and the questions can be, if you have for all the faculty members, if you want to ask one person in particular. So please feel free to ask your questions. I see that Lamont has a question.
Hi, thank you, professors. So just a question, what piece of advice would you have to give this incoming cohort?
can start. It's I mean, there's a litany of things that we definitely could give you. I think two things that come to mind that was helpful in my work was number one, be sure of what your topic is, and then put blinders on and keep it that topic, because as you go through these courses, you're going to read some amazing stuff. You're going to hear amazing work and research that's happening. Your colleagues will come up with ideas, and it's very easy to say, you know what, I don't like my topic anymore. I'm going to go and do this, or I'm going to try something different. And you can definitely add and kind of massage things together, but um, the chance to get it completed is to keep things focused and moving forward towards something. So you want to really make sure you have that passion for it, because you're going to live with it for 3 years, and really push those ideas. So it's easy to jump to something else. I know that it was very hard to stick to one. My second piece of advice would be to think about compartmentalizing your time when you're in a doctoral program. So a lot of times we can multitask, and then the email comes up and we jump to that, and then we get a phone call and we jump to that. I think it's really important, if you're doing a dissertation and doing doctoral studies, that you compartmentalize your time and you carve out specific spaces of time where you are working on doctoral work, especially when you start working on your writing of your dissertation, whether it's Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., that's my writing time, and that's where I'm going to do it, or at night, or whatever it is. Carving out those times, it takes negotiation with your loved ones and family and friends, and sometimes there might be some things you miss, but it's there for in the long run. It's gonna pan out. You just really have to be disciplined in, this is my time to do my writing. Even if I sit and stare at a blank page sometimes, I'm there, so that you can make things happen. Those are the two things I would say off the top of my head.
Now, maybe to add to that, when you do have a topic, the hardest thing is to narrow it down and really hone in on what are you going to focus your work on. And I think I usually tell students to use your courses and the assignments that come up in your courses to do that. So make sure you're focusing in on like one sub aspect of your topic, and so that you can dig deep into one area and say, okay, well, I kind of that was interesting, but that's not the exact area I want to focus on under this topic. And then your next course, you can pursue something else. So I just think using kind of the coursework strategically to really dig into your topic in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, ditto on what my colleagues have said. I just want to, emphasize that. I mean, that is great advice. That's advice that was given to me when I was going through my doctoral studies, and they served me well. And I guess one thing that I would add is, to Dr. Ponce's point about, kind of carving out the time. I mean, I think all of us who do this kind of work kind of have a variation of that, right? Well, like, when I write, like, and I tell my students this when they're writing, is find out where you can, get blocks of time. And there are some days where you can get in one block of 1 hour, but there may be days where you can get 2 blocks of 2 hours, in the morning and, in the evening when the kids go to bed. But have those blocks, and those blocks are, you stay, committed to kind of, that's my time to be a scholar and to do the scholarly work, whether it's for something for a class, or whether once you're in the dissertation phase, doing the dissertation work. And like Dr. Ponce said, that's a negotiation between your commitments professionally to your job, your commitments to your family, right? And that may be something that you discuss as a family, like, okay, this, we're gonna try to do it this way because this is how I can, get the work done that I need to get done. So that I can get that return on investment. So the family, the community, everyone else gets a return on investment on your efforts. And sort of related to that is that, you know, one of the things I appreciate about our colleagues in the program, and this all the way up from, you know, the leadership and, you know, the co-directors and Michaela and everyone else who supports Pro and the faculty, that we understand that, you know, you have other obligations other than the doctoral program. Now, we're going to help you to carve out time and figure out strategies how to make sure that you know, do that work. But, you know, we're not going to be, pretend like you don't have a family or don't have a job obligations. Like if something comes up, like, you know, your child gets sick, your spouse gets sick, or something comes up at work where you have to work late, and we need to be flexible on, you know, deliverables for assignments or your dissertation. You know, we approach the work through that premise, right? And we help you to figure out kind of how to balance that when it gets more challenging to balance things. And not to say that something that, you know, certainly wasn't my experience with a grad student. It was like, you know, doesn't matter to us what's happening outside of you being a grad student. We expect you to do grad student stuff, you know, on our timeline, and you figure out the rest. Like, you know, it's a very different culture, and it's a very different just philosophy of supporting and nurturing talent. That I think, you know, our faculty are you know, they all of the same mindset in acknowledging that reality of our students.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we have 2 questions in the chat from Rosie. The first question is, do the courses in the program involve group work, or are they more individually focused in terms of assignments? And I know that kind of varies by course, so I'll let each of our faculty here just speak to how the courses are, how the assignments are devised in their classes.
I can just say, jump in. I think, yeah, it varies. And I think like within the research use course, there's an end of the course cumulative set of assignments that are done individually, but in the midst of that, we have a book club, you know, reading group report that is done in a group. So it's kind of a mix in that course.
Yeah, it's same in the courses that I teach. There, some of the main assignments are kind of individual, but there are also other assignments where, you know, students work in groups, you know, to put something together, and that's true for, I mean, actually all the courses I teach in our department, both our doctoral level and our master's level, we have a little bit of both. And then just to get started on that second question there, yeah, I mean, we do have teachers in the doctoral program, and in particular, you know, we have a lot of teachers who have taken on leadership roles. I mean, you know, teacher leadership is we're big on that. You know, folks that, you know, may not have the official administrator credential and may not have sat in an official leadership chair, but, you know, they're curriculum leaders, they're leaders in other ways in their school, and to the point where, you know, their application is compelling that way in terms of the criteria for admissions in the doctoral program. So, I mean, I work with many students who, you know, have not held, you know, a formal leadership role per se, you know, in their school setting, but they've taken multiple leadership roles, you know, in their teacher hat at school.
Do you have anything to add, Dr. Ponce?
Nothing better than what my colleague said. So I learned to just sit back and listen and learn as well.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we have another question about how does does the program bridge LMU's Catholic mission with preparing leaders for either Catholic and public school leadership? And would you say that there is a difference?
I can jump on this one. I think one of the beauties of a doctoral program, especially one such as ours, is you bring the expertise to us in terms of what you're interested in and what you are passionate about. So if you are a Catholic leader or a Catholic school and work in Catholic schools, great. We want you to bring that experience. We want you to bring what you're passionate about and make that part of your experience through the courses. It's a leadership doctorate. And so you are really infusing it with what you are interested in, what your upbringing is, and we want you to bring that to the table. I wouldn't say that it's different, other than you have an opportunity to really hone in on what it is that you want to learn about that, or you want to research about that. So, yeah, we've had plenty of amazing dissertations and work done across all specters of all spectrums of schooling, Catholic school, public charter, independent schools, homeschooling, nonprofits that are outside of education, on the fringes of education, policy. I mean, all types of. So we welcome you to bring what it is that you are passionate about and use that as part of your work.
And I would add, and I wonder, Michaela, if you could maybe share in the chat a link to where our doctoral dissertations are archived. For they're open access, so you could peruse. And so to Dr. Ponce's point, you'll see that there's a lot of dissertations on sort of the various sectors, including higher ed. And the other thing I would say is, having been, affiliated with the program since, I joined the faculty at LMU in 2018, and I'm part of the doctoral committee, which is our purview is the curriculum of the program, that many of the courses do touch specifically on kind of leadership in the Catholic space, right? So there may be readings, and so depending on your interest and if you're coming from that sector, there are opportunities to do assignments around that, and there's readings around that. Now that varies from course to course depending on the topic. I know when I used to teach the leadership for social justice, we did a whole section on Catholic schools, charter schools, higher education, community colleges. I mean, we try to cover as much of that spectrum, and various programs kind of lend themselves to kind of doing that more than others. But increasingly, depending on the percentage of students that come from the Catholic sector, I know that was one of the questions, how many students come from that. It really varies. There are some years where, maybe a third, even higher. I remember, I think my first year that I started teaching the doctoral course, I would say close to a half. So it varies, and I've seen it vary from close to a half to like a third to like a fourth. Sometimes we have a big group of charter sector folks. Sometimes we have a big group of higher ed. In recent years, we've had a lot of folks in the community college sector. And so we've been talking about it in the doctoral committee about how to make the curriculum much more responsive to those students, right? So have more readings, more kind of discussions, assignments around not just higher ed, but in particular the community college sector, right? Because it's such a critical entry point, and I think it's a great space. Higher ed is one of the areas that I it's my areas of focus, and community colleges are I think an ideal space to kind of study and understand equity and access issues, right? So the question about what percentage is Catholic, it does really vary from year to year. I mean, there's been some years where we've had more than 50% that were from the higher ed sector, mostly community college, and then a couple from a four-year institutions and so on. And in terms of the funding, the question about the funding, we are an R2 institution, which means that, we our faculty do engage in a significant level of research, but not to the level of, let's say, an R1 like UCLA, where if you've been following the news, or like Columbia and all these places that they're looking at $300 million and so forth. Like we don't do research at that scale, and so the impacts on those institutions from the federal budget cuts that you've been reading about in the paper have affected us. I mean, I know I have a grant that was affected by some of that. Sort of looking at world languages, some of my language focused work, but it's small, and certainly it hasn't affected. It doesn't affect kind of the funding and resources that we provide, because a lot of those resources either come from endowments or private or philanthropic sources, not so much the federal government. Our ones, I don't think they would have thought it, but that's become, I think, a very concerning issue for them, because for them it does affect this kinds of financial aid that they can provide, because so much of it is dependent on federal research grants, which we operate under a significantly different financial model. So yes, we have been affected, but at a much lower scale, and we're still fully committed to DEI. I mean, the university has a vice president of DEI. That's a presidential cabinet level position, and we have a lot of programming around DEI, because that's connected to our Jesuit mission, and so that is our DNA, and that's not going to change regardless of what's happening in in the federal government. Anything happens to sort of come our way, then we have different ways to kind of engage in that conversation, and particularly sort of highlighting that the work that we do around DEI is inextricably connected to our Jesuit mission and values, and so it comes from that place, and so constitutionally that is a significant consideration, and if that was to become an issue for us, but it hasn't, and the commitment's unwavering, all the way from the president to the provost to our dean to our faculty and this program.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Perez. We have a question stemming from what Dr. Yamashiro talked about bridging the gap between research and practice. And the question is, how does the program help students to connect their research to their careers, which is a really, really great question.
Yeah, I just to follow up, since I mentioned that, I mean, I could talk about this for all day, because that's part of what I'm trying to accomplish with that course, is to make sure that not just your dissertation, but ongoing reflection and inquiry is embedded in your leadership practice. So as you go out and have questions about inequities at your school site or in your organization, how can you bring research to bear so that there's evidence for making decisions to move things forward, and to continuously reflect upon that as well. Like, so that's, and I think these sort of principles are embedded in a lot of the courses. It's not just my course, but so considering evidence in decision making and using research to kind of inform that along the way. So that would be kind of the short answer.
Yeah, I think I would add it's one of the reasons why one would choose an EDD as opposed to a PhD. And in terms of this for this program, is it's for the practitioners that are kind of in the field, solving problems that they see on a day-to-day basis in the work that they do on every day. At least for me, it was as a leader, as a school leader, I wanted to learn more about how to do that. And so the research I was doing and the theories that I was learning, I was always thinking of ways to make the connection because the EDD and the dissertation is about the practice, and so you couldn't tear them apart. They were linked no matter what, and so everything that you were learning, you were thinking about how to make it work in the settings that you were in. So it helps. I think that helps. Just the structure itself helps to make sure that you're connecting things into the day-to-day work as well.
Yeah, I mean, just really quick to echo my colleagues' comments. I mean, one of the things that you'll hear a lot about in the program is that our students in the dissertations tackle problems of practice. And normally that's, basically taking, a problem of practice in their place of work and doing research around it. So for example, I have a student who, is leading a, HSI initiative effort at her institution. And so her dissertation is about that, about, kind of how to make that more impactful. I have another student who works in a program that helps, formerly incarcerated youth, be able to access college. So she did the dissertation on, children of incarcerated parents and how that impacts their experience in college. I have a student who is an arts teacher at a middle school, and the dissertation is on arts-based pedagogy to help long-term English language learners to be reclassified so that they can access the college-going curriculum. I have another teacher who works for a charter system, who uses technology to help English learners be able to reclassify. So she's doing kind of a culturally responsive, technological pedagogy approach to, to understand. And these are things that they'll be able to bring back their findings to their professional endeavors and address those issues and make a difference. And you'll find, and if you click on those dissertations, you'll find that all of them are a version of that. People are focusing on things that will help them, solve problems of practice in the various spheres that they work in.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, we have about 3 minutes left. So just really quick, I'm going to ask you all just to speak to Lamont's final question, just about how you define social justice, and if you think that the outcomes of the program are still viable right now.
I can take a shot at it. In terms of defining social justice, I think overall it's not just uh, equity and access, but I think it's also meeting people where they are and understanding and caring about the whole person. I think in the end, it's what we call cura personalis. It's the dedication of care for the whole person, and I think that overall, I think is the charism that the Jesuit institution and really focuses on. And so I think the social justice aspect comes from that, is really about that care. And whether it's viable now, I think more now than ever before. When kind of chaos is around and chaos is happening, leadership is the key to solve that. And I think that's what we're still focused on in our work and in the courses.
Yeah, I wonder, just to build on that, I wondered what Lamont meant by sustainable outcomes. I think I was trying to find this. Whether you meant for society or for yourself or for, kids.
I believe in terms of the program lasting, and the outcomes from having gone to LMU,
Hmm.
and are we still going to have a nation? I'm starting to wonder in which social justice is even relevant. I'm getting kind of nervous here. So
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, like Will said, one of the things that at least protects this university, we hope, is, that the idea of social justice is so core to the Jesuit philosophy. And so we believe, and we've been told that our institution will stand strong with that. Um, as to what happens around us, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. Things are a little bit iffy right now. But I think the key to all of that is always about community, right? And I think that that's what LMU offers, is sort of a little bit of a safe haven because everyone here has committed to social justice. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I think, one of the things that, we have been, very, explicit about, in recognizing is that social justice and kind of what that commitment means, changes over time, depending on kind of what the socio-political climate is like. And so, what social justice meant when we started the program, over 20 years ago, and what it meant to do that work looks very different than what is going to look like today, because the socio-political and historical context is different, and so it warrants a different approach to the work. And part of the job, that part of the work that part of the thing that we're always thinking about in the doctoral committee in terms of the curriculum and providing our students with the tools is to kind of have a pulse on, well, what is it that our students will need when they go out there with their degree to do this work, given the current state of things, right? And that means knowing how to navigate those very dicey kind of socio-political shifting contexts that and how to do that in a way that allows you to be impactful, right? To be part of the building, and to be an agent of change. You'll hear that a lot around LMU, not just in the doctoral program, but in many of our programs, is how to equip our students with the tools to be agents of change, and what that means. What it means today is going to be different than what it might mean 2 years from now or 3 years from now. Should you decide to come and join us and go on this journey along with us. So I know that's not like a clear fixed answer. That's because I think that definition is one that has not been fixed and shouldn't be fixed, because then the moment that it becomes fixed, then then we risk being less responsive to kind of needs of our educational system and of our students in the communities that we serve.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I just want to give another huge thank you to our panel for joining us this evening. As I said earlier, I put links to their bios in the chat, so if you want to learn more about them. If you think of any questions after tonight's session, please feel free to email us at doctoral@lmu.edu. Whether you have questions about the program, the application process, if you want to be connected with any of the faculty here tonight, we're happy to initiate that contact for you. So thank you again for joining us, and it was really great to see all of you, and we look forward to receiving your applications.